Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys today. And I have a very, very, very special guest with me today, Arielle Guttman, who is the author of Venus Star Rising. So today's conversation will predominantly be about the Venus star point, the transiting Venus star point, and many other elements around the whole Venus star point to help us all understand what the Venus star point means for us all. So I'd like to introduce Arielle and have her share a little bit about herself and her journey in astrology, and her book, of course, as well, which we really want to highlight today, because if you are really serious about working with the Venus star point, you do need to have this book. It's really the only book that's written to the extent that it is on the Venus star point. So, hi, Arielle, and thank you so much for gifting us your precious, precious time. We are very grateful.
Well, hello in Kalispera, or Kalimera, Anastasia. It's so good to be with you. We've talked about our Greek connection, so and also our astrological and our Venus connection. So it's very nice to be
Absolutely.
here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We are so grateful to you for your time.
Thanks. Yeah. So here we are on the evening, just a few hours before evening for me, morning for you. Just
Exactly.
a few hours before the Venus star Cazimi. So we set it up this way. So this is a perfect time. And if you do wind up uploading this to YouTube right away, people will still have time to view this right at the time of the Cazimi. And
Yep.
maybe they can do their little Venus star blessing and prayer for the next 9.5 months.
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful tip and a wonderful reminder for people as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Arielle. Just a little bit about your background, how you came into astrology, or how long you've been working with astrology. When did you write the book?
Well, astrology came to me when I was in my 20s uh, by a group of people passing in and out of my life. I was in Southern California at the time, but actually it was on the steps of the Acropolis in Athens, Greece,
Wow.
where it was first mentioned to me. I was traveling with a young man who was a mythology major from UC Santa Cruz, and he was talking all about mythology. And also then he started mentioning astrology and asked me my sign and whatnot and my birth date. And I didn't know much about it at the time. I knew I loved mythology and I loved that. So as soon as I got home from Greece, I started looking at astrology, and I was hooked right away. It was just it took, you know, I was about, let's see, I don't know, I'll be giving my age away if I tell you how old I was, but that was 47 years ago. And anyway, I've been with it, and we were just talking before about how I do get bored with things in my life pretty easily that become routine, but I've never gotten bored with astrology in 47 years. And perhaps that's because I have gone down different lanes with
Yeah.
astrology. There are so many techniques. There are
Yeah.
hundreds of techniques out there for astrologers to use. And it's almost like it's hard to choose, but you will know your mind, your heart, your body, you will get a response and know what type of astrology is really the kind of astrology you want to practice.
Absolutely.
And there's no wrong way to approach it, or no incorrect way to learn it, really, if you're with a good teacher and with it, because I think all the systems work
Yeah.
and they all have a point of view, and a lot of times it just goes with your own point of view.
Hmm.
I came into astrology in the 70s, 1970s, when there was a big revival or kind of awakening of humanistic astrology with Dane Rudyard and that kind of philosophical astrology and psychological astrology. And so that's where I began.
Mm, mm,
And I pretty much stayed with it as a psycho-spiritual approach.
mhm,
And really, what I'm here to do with astrology with people is it doesn't matter what kind of astrology you practice. It's really how can you best serve the person looking
mhm,
into it, asking you for advice or answers or guidance.
mhm.
Because typically, when they come to you, they're in a time of their life when they really need some answers and they haven't found them in other places.
Exactly.
And I think astrology is so brilliant at being able to, answer those questions. And I don't mean like a crystal ball, like giving you the exact, this is what's going to happen,
Mhm,
but really painting a picture of who you are and what your surroundings are and what the archetypes are by the transits or whatever that are going on around you, what periods you're in, what phases you're in. I mean, astrology is really the study of cycles and phases. And so it may seem like it's really, for some people, really, really hard time that they're in at the moment, but this too shall pass. You
exactly.
know, everything, has a time and a meaning. And so, but to go back to your question of, I started with the psychological approach. I've always been interested more than anything in astrology in human relationships.
Mm, mm,
And I felt that astrology was one of the best systems around to be able to define connections between people
mm,
in a way that nothing else really could.
mm. And your own Venus star point, Ariel, is in your first house, right? So it's opposite the seventh house. It's in Aries, right? And it's opposite
Hmm.
your seventh house. So,
Yeah, and it's conjunct my north node.
mm,
Um, it's my south node is in the seventh,
mm,
my north node's in the first, but the Venus star point, which I later found out because I didn't start working with the Venus star point right away.
mhm.
So I found, I discovered, oh, that's interesting. My when I found my Venus star point, that's conjunct my North Node.
You were destined to write the book, destined to bring the gift of Venus in the wisdom, through the wisdom that you've brought her in, the gift that you've brought to all of us. You were destined to do it. The North Node is our destiny, isn't it? It's our future direction. It's a very special and powerful point. And to have your,
It's kind of where we're pointing our compass.
yeah,
Yeah, the North Node, I would say, is a place we're pointing our compass.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
when was it when you started to think more about the Venus star point? How did that come into your consciousness?
Well, it kind of just dropped in. I was researching 2004. I was researching the upcoming Venus retrograde in Gemini, and something made me say while I was writing a little article about it for a tour we were doing in southern France at the sacred goddess sites. And this tour I was doing was called In Search of the Sacred Feminine.
Mm,
And we were going to a lot of the shrines, the Black Madonna shrines, and also, France is just full of goddess
yeah.
images and the feminine mystique. And I thought, and I was supposed to do a few astrology talks on that tour, and I thought, well, what better symbol for a feminine conference in search of the feminine than Venus? So let's talk about Venus. So I noticed that during the tour, it was going to be retrograde in Gemini. And I thought, okay, let's look at that. And so then I charted the last retrograde, and the one before that, and then the one before that. And pretty soon I realized this is the 5-pointed star of Venus, because every time it goes retrograde, it hooks up to one of those star points.
Mm.
And I had heard and read that Venus makes a pentagram, but I really didn't know much about it. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't really understand the mechanics of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Venus star rising is about. It's like that little bit of research showed me that the star happens through Venus's astronomical orbit around the sun with the Earth. It's a dance, really. It's with the Earth and Venus together as they go around the sun. They're not always together. You know, sometimes Venus moves faster, sometimes the sun moves faster, but every 9.5 months they meet up.
Mm-hmm.
And when they meet up, it's like, okay, there it is. What's happening tonight, called the Cazimi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the Cazimi means in the heart of the sun, when the planet is in the heart of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't use the star points based on where it goes retrograde. You could take the retrograde position, or you could take where it turns direct.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose to take the middle of the cycle of retrograde, which is the conjunction with the sun, because that's when it's in the heart of the sun. I mean, this whole theory about the Venus star points is based on when Venus is in the heart of the sun. And because she's the love planet, the love goddess, I liked the idea that she was in the heart of the sun, our brightest light, the thing that gives us life and light in our solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I chart the star points from one Cazimi to the next,
Mm-hmm.
which is like every 9.5 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more I got into it, the more uplifted I was working with it, the more joy I felt, the more like, wow, this is incredible. Everything that came. And I thought, I had just finished writing another book, and I really did not want to write another book. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can you refuse Venus?
You can't. She was calling you. She was absolutely calling you. And it just occurred to me, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I don't think I did, and you've of course you would have noticed this yourself, but just relative to Greece and um, when you do your relocation chart to Greece, Pallas Athena is right on your ascendant. So you're this goddess of wisdom. When
Well, I noticed that Athena was rising right over Athens, her city, and of course, that is my connection. I have a strong connection to Greece. Everybody asks me if I'm Greek, and
mm,
I don't know if I am. Maybe somewhere back there, but
mm,
um, I feel like I am somewhere,
mm,
and Athena is there. Athena is right on the ascendant in Athens, rising in Athens. And I think there's two ways to chart the rising of a planet in astrocartography. One of them is in Mundo, and one of them is, just the zodiac position. Athena actually rises in Mundo right around Istanbul, and it rises in the zodiac around right over Athens. So actually, those two cities are really kind of important. They both have histories
mhm,
of astrology and, charting the stars and whatnot in the ancient temples and things. And they're both cities that I love. I went to Istanbul for my first time 2 years ago when we were still traveling.
mhm,
And but of course, I've been to Athens and Greece probably about 20 times now in my life. So that's really a special love.
mm,
But it's very interesting that I was standing on the steps of the Acropolis, which is Athena's monument,
mm,
where astrology was first given to me as far as
mm,
an idea to
mm.
pursue.
Well, that's Pallas on your ascendant in the relocated chart. That's just magical. That the synchronicity and the symbolism of that is truly magical. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And those are the kinds of things that actually have happened to me in my life. A lot of mythic archetypal things. I have friends and acquaintances that say to me that, gosh, Arielle, your life is, it's like out of a myth. It's so archetypal. It's like,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, it is.
Mm.
What's that all about?
We're all I think we are all living sort of breathing embodiments of the archetypes, aren't we? Whether we are aware of it or not, we are literally the manifestation of those archetypes, in so many different ways. Yeah. And our life story and life journey often mirrors that in very clear ways. It's not obscure, it's very, very clear. It's just really about understanding the archetypes, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Would you like to, just with regards to the book, is that your 10-year anniversary? Is that correct?
Yeah, just past our 10-year mark. It was
Congratulations.
published in March of 2011.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations. I
Thank
want,
you.
if I had the means, I would buy that book for every single person who is interested in astrology. That's how much I want people to read it, to learn about it.
Oh, you are so,
I mean that. Like,
so
I really
sweet.
mean that. I really mean that. It's just literally what I feel. It's just, it's brought so much richness into my life. It's been 4 years since my father transitioned, which I briefly mentioned to you earlier, and that's when my whole life really transitioned. And the Venus, the awareness of your work has come through during that period. So it's very interesting that in this 3D reality, we constantly go through death and rebirth. Even when we go to sleep at night, that's a death. And when we wake up, it's a rebirth, as it were, just literally on that level as well. And then, of course, we have many different cycles that take us through death and rebirth. And then, of course, we have, the loss of loved ones, where it is literally a physical death, right? So, it the and the Venus star point herself, because I suppose perhaps many people might assume that when we're looking at the Venus star point, that it's all about love, and yes, it is. She is all about love, but it can also show that the transitioning, right, that the death and rebirth in people's lives. And so whether that's,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
When I chart the Venus star points in a person's life chart, it's always like the highs and the lows of life dealing with love, either the loss of somebody very close to them or the joining with somebody that's going to be very important in their life.
Yeah.
But the myth of Venus goes, a lot of myths about Venus. One of them is about Inanna,
Mm-hmm.
and there are many astrologers that are using the mythology of the descent of Inanna
Mm-hmm.
along with the Venus cycle and the Venus phases and her conjunctions with the moon,
Mm-hmm.
and how she was the queen of heaven, right? Inanna. And she had to go through each of these gates, sacrificing one thing at a time, eventually stripping down to nothing, to her core,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually regaining it all again. But this is Venus's phases, as it goes through, the darker disappearance phases, and then, coming back up again. And that's the beauty of, that's the way life is.
Mm-hmm.
We can't hold on to things. We can't hold on to people even forever.
No.
And it is a loss, that we feel, but all of these things, that whether it's a feeling of loss or a feeling of, a new beginning in a new relationship, they're all about the heart. They're all about making us feel in a deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what Venus is here to
Mm.
do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And by the way, I tracked my Venus star point, which I'm happy to disclose just my Venus star point, which is in Scorpio, from birth to the age where I'm at now. I tracked the Venus Scorpio star point. Basically, I looked at the halfway point, the 4 years, and every 8 years. But then I also looked at all the other star points as well. But the Venus Scorpio star point for me, relative to the cycle from the time I was born or just pre-birth to this age now, every single Venus Scorpio star point that has happened, I have had major, significant transitions, shifts, deaths, rebirths, relationships, career transitions, relocations, you name it. It's just hit after hit after hit after hit. There wasn't even one there where there was just a gap in all my years of life. I was blown away by that, actually, the consistency of following, that particular journey. Yeah.
And that's what I found too. When you chart your own Venus star cycle, your 8-year pentagram through life, of course, the simple way is every 8 years you get your Venus return, and you get your Venus star point return. But every 4 years in the halfway mark, you get the same sign return, but you get a different phase. And so, like now, I happen to be an Aries evening star, and we're just going into the Aries evening star. So I'm going into an 8-year Venus cycle return.
Happy
But
return.
like you, 4 years ago when it came into Aries, it
Yeah.
was still it was still an important period for me. It was a major shift for me. Like you, my mother had just passed away right before that,
Mm.
and that was a really big deal for me, even though we all expected it and we all knew, and she was of that age and
Mm.
with the health that one would expect. But when it happens, you just are never really quite prepared for it. And it really made my Aries star point, it made me realize again that I really am on my own now, because that was my last living parent. It was my last real, like, even though I didn't, in the last 10 years of my mother's life, I never really leaned on her or asked her for, her mind was going, etc. But she was still there,
Mm.
and she had always been there as kind of, a pillar in my life,
Yes.
the Capricorn pillar. And I know she used to say to me a lot, I know we were very different, but you've always called me your rock or your pillar. And I said, well, you're the Capricorn rock in my life. Steady as she goes.
Mm.
And then suddenly you realize, and you can really feel it, that pillar, that rock isn't there anymore, you know? And so it took me another step in my Aries to realize I'm really on my own now.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, this is it. I
Mm.
mean, I didn't have children,
Mm.
etc.
Mm.
So it's like, yeah, losing a parent can be that way. It's not that way for everybody, but uh, it was a definite step.
Mm.
Um, and now in this Aries star point, and I started that year actually, and she had always said to me, this is what's really funny. She always said, I know you want to move to Greece, but I hope you'll wait until I'm gone to do that.
Oh, wow.
I just want you to be here and know that you're close, okay? Even though we were a couple thousand miles apart, we were in the same country.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so here I am 4 years later, and I really am
Mm.
trying to get to Greece in earnest now.
Wow. Wow. So it's everything is timing in life, isn't it? And like you said before, astrology corresponds or reflects the different cycles of things that happen in our life, right? And even the example you were just giving, whilst your mother may have been older, it doesn't really matter. It's got nothing to do with the age of the person. Like I
Right.
said, it's that the fact that both of you knew that you were in the same country, that the sense of comfort that that can bring is enough within itself, even if you didn't speak every day or didn't see each other very often. It's just that knowing. It's a sort of a psychological, emotional comfort, sense of security, I think, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything is timing. So yeah, I'd love to see you move to Greece because I'll be coming there to visit you.
Okay. That's a date.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Okay, so we've kind of dived into a few different things. So would you like to maybe share some slides, Ariel, just to kind of
Sure.
start to bring some visuals, and then we can, yeah, unpack and break things down
Yeah.
a bit
And
further?
I can go through these pretty quickly. This doesn't have to be like a class or
Oh,
anything, but you know, I can go through them. You can stop and ask me questions about any of them also, you know, we
okay.
can comment on them. But I always feel like a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And because the Venus star point work is kind of new
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of astrologers, and they don't really understand what it's all based on and where it comes from. I think the visuals are actually, you know, a very good thing to have. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to share my screen,
Mhm.
and I'm going to go into my PowerPoint slide show. Here we go.
Beautiful.
So the only thing is this Zoom thing. I'm gonna shrink it down. There we go. So I can see. Can you still see me
I can see you. Yep.
in a little? Okay. All right. So yeah, we're going into the Aries star point, and this happens every 4 years. As we mentioned, the last time was March 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And this Aries evening star phase will last until January of 22,
Mm-hmm.
when Venus will be retrograde, and she will then go connect with her next star point, which is in Capricorn. It'll be right around 18 degrees of Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
So next slide. This image on the right, can you see my little arrow moving?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. This image on the right is become pretty iconic by
Mm.
now. It's been all over the internet, but I use it as my um, graphic to show the Earth Venus orbit. And you can see inside this little flower.
Mm.
It's shaped like a 5 petaled flower.
Mm.
And actually, it's been compared, this Venus star pattern has been compared to a rose, a
Mm.
many petaled rose, you know, with the unfolding of all the different layers.
Mm-hmm.
And Venus and the rose are connected. Um, the anagram for rose is Eros, and the medieval astrologers and also the troubadours used to offer roses, and they built rose windows in the cathedrals and
Mm.
of Europe, and they usually were facing west, where they could where the setting Venus was.
Mm.
Um, and this is the image that we've come to know as Venus, you know, the Botticelli Venus floating to shore on the shell. And
Yes.
that is one of the myths of her birth. And this is like the love goddess Venus, right?
Mm. Mm.
Okay. And then this symbol is just the symbol that I use for the Venus star when I'm charting it. It's a darkened Venus because you can't see Venus when she's cazimi with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Any planet that's that close to the sun
Mm-hmm.
basically is, you know, the rays of the sun blot out the light, so you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's the little star that, you know, represents her.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is Venus all about? What have I learned since my discovery of her? First of all, it's a beautiful design and it's uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the cosmic heartbeat of the world.
I love that. When I first heard that, because I've done some webinars that you've produced over the last couple of years and so forth, and when I saw that particular line, it's like an arrow just went straight into my heart. It really touched me very deeply. It's words, but it's more than words. Just the way you've written that. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and we need that cosmic heart beating for us. And of course, it's the divine feminine principle. And I think it's the divine feminine, but I want to say it's also the earthly feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about the power of, well, it is the power of love, actually.
Mm.
And of course, that's not just for women or for the feminine, it's for everybody. But she is a feminine archetype. And I know right now, these days, especially, there's all these questions about, defining or indicating, um, labeling things as gender or feminine or masculine or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's an archetype. And an archetype is, Mars is our masculine archetype,
Mm-hmm.
one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and Venus is the feminine archetype. And that's how we've always looked at it in our charts. And that doesn't mean, we have both archetypes in our charts. We have Mars and Venus, no matter what gender we were born with. And so we have those principles acting.
Mm.
But the thing is, it's really simple to work with. It's simple to locate.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly sophisticated, and it's an accurate astrological tool that I have found really pinpoints for a person where their most natural gifts and talents reside, and how to find deeper meaning in their partnerships, and how to very simply track Venus's movement through one's life. In like you said, the major losses of love or renewals of love. And I also think one of the most important relationships with Venus that I work with is these little 9.5 month incremental periods, because it helps me focus on, planning my calendar or my year ahead. It's like, okay, this year Venus is in my first house, so I'm going to. That's where the emphasis is until we get to Capricorn next January, and then it's going to be in my 10th house. So each of these phases and each of these heartbeats that it repeats every 4 years in a sign or a house is a good way to point out to people, okay, where is Venus residing for you this period, and how would you like to honor that?
Arielle, can I ask a question that perhaps some of the audience members might have this in their mind as well? I was thinking about, and this can apply, of course, to our own Venus star point pre-birth, which will show that we can show your little ephemeris that you've got and how people can identify their Venus star point through that a little bit later, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I have a slide for that. Yeah.
Perfect. So what would you say is the difference between the Venus star point in the sign and then the Venus star point in the house? Actually, no, let me rephrase that question. It's not what the difference is. The question rather is one more important than the other? Or would you just say that they are both as important but speak in different ways? How would you explain that to people?
Yeah, they're both important. The thing is, just like anything in astrology, we can all have, let's say, Pluto in Capricorn, where it is right now, but we're all going to have it in a different house. So your Venus star point, the year you were born or the 9-month period you were born in, you're going to share that with everybody born then. It's going to be the same Venus star point by sign. But the house actually gives it a more personal flavor in terms of, okay, where is it acting? What house is it acting through? And like everything in astrology, you want to kind of combine the sign in the house. I don't know that either one is more important.
Mm.
I think that the blending of the two is what's important.
Mm. Mm. Yes, I have to agree with that. I just wanted to hear your perspective on that, and just so for the sake of the audience as well, because they probably have that question in mind. But I agree with you 100%. Even just in my own case, Scorpio Venus star point really describes me down to a T. And then in the 10th house, it brings in the whole parental axis, which has been a huge karmic theme in my life. So, yes.
Right.
Mm.
And this is really more about the idea that we've had goddesses of all different cultures and all different time periods being represented to us as the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go into the core of their mythology, of their stories, they really are all reflecting our planet Venus.
Mm.
And so I thought this was an interesting slide to show about all the different attributes and all the different, kind of the what do you call it? The reigning power that this goddess has had throughout life, throughout different time periods as well, and
Absolutely.
different cultures.
I just want to show you this, Ariel, and for the audience as well. This was gifted to me not so long ago, and it's a book about Venus. And it's worth reading because the person who's written this has looked at Venus in all the different, similar to what you were just showing with your slide, all the different faces of Venus. So this goes back into about 6,000 years ago, the history of Venus from back then. So it is a good book if you're interested in Venus. Yeah,
Great. That looks really good.
you'd
Yeah.
love it. You'd love it without question. Yeah.
And then to show you just the phases, I mean, Venus goes through phases like the moon does, and we don't always think of it, but the
Mm.
two conjunctions,
Mm-hmm.
in the cycle of Venus, the two that are really important is there's the inferior conjunction, and inferior doesn't mean less than, it means it's closest to the earth. It's like really the interior conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Venus is between the sun and the earth, closest to earth, happening right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the one we're in now is the superior conjunction, where Venus and the sun are conjunct, but Venus is on the far side of the sun,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the farthest away from earth as it possibly can be right now.
Okay. So the interior conjunction is when she's retrograde, and the
Yes,
yes, and the
always
superior.
retrograde at the interior conjunction. Yeah.
And so at the moment we have the current Venus star point, 5 degrees of Aries is a superior conjunction, meaning she's furthest from the Earth. She's an evening star, or transitioning into an evening
She
star.
will be as soon as we can see her.
Yeah.
When she comes out from the beams of the sun, and she takes a long time to come out from the beams of the sun when she's in this superior conjunction, because they're both traveling together kind of almost at the same speed. And
Mhm.
so it's like that passing car on the highway where you're both going the same speed and you're next to each other for a long time, but eventually one of them will go an extra mile or two ahead and overtake the car next to it. That's how Venus and the sun are traveling now. And I think the love goddess connection to that, the way I've configured it anyway, or explained it, is that she comes out as the love goddess because she's had a very long, private, not being seen
Mm,
liaison with the sun,
mm,
traveling together for almost 60 days, disappeared from our view,
mm,
um, kind of doing her own thing, and then she comes out and makes herself visible to the world in the night sky. But
mhm,
when she's in the morning phase and in the interior conjunction phase with the sun,
mhm,
closest to the earth, she's always in retrograde. So
mhm,
she's going one direction The sun is traveling the other direction. They're passing like ships in the night, and they keep moving away from each other. They've hardly spent more than a night together, right?
Right.
And then by the time she goes direct and catches up with the sun again, the sun's all the way over on the other side, and then she's back here at the superior conjunction for the evening star.
Wow. I love
So
that. I love that. So that also speaks to the book that you've written. You have a really great little graph in there that defines the difference between, you know, a morning star and an evening star relative to the qualities, right? Because she's a slightly different goddess in her expression. As an evening star, she corresponds to Urania, right? The goddess Urania.
yeah, that slide is actually coming up.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, I'll wait for that.
This is just another picture I thought I'd show the evening star Venus so people could get more of an idea of it. Here's Earth, where we are.
Hmm.
Then we've got the sun. And beyond the sun, all the way over on the other side of the sky, up in the heavens, dancing up in the heavens,
Mm,
Venus Urania, cosmic Venus.
mm,
Then she's traveling direct and she's over here right now.
mhm,
But if you wanted to look at the morning star version,
mhm,
here she is between the sun and the earth.
mm,
And she's actually closest to the earth
mm,
then, and she is in retrograde motion.
mhm, mhm. That's a beautiful visual for people to really understand that whole concept of when she is closest to the earth and when she's, you know, farthest from the earth, right? Because just seeing the position of the earth, the sun, and Venus, it helps us understand what's actually happening astronomically, right?
Not only that, but if you think about Venus in your natal chart,
Mm-hmm.
it's just Venus going around the circle.
Mm,
And she could have stopped anywhere. On the day you were born, you're just kind of taking a snapshot of where the planets are on that day.
mm-hmm.
And she could be anywhere, not necessarily with the sun, not necessarily,
Mm,
any connection. But in this configuration, whether it's morning or evening,
mm,
at both conjunctions or casimis,
mm,
she's really, everything's lined up.
mm,
So we have the light of the sun and the heart of Venus
mm,
hitting the body of the earth.
mm,
And that's what I'd like to say about,
mm.
the light, the love, the body. It's all lined up, and it's like a laser beam of that energy coming to us.
That's beautiful.
Now, not everybody feels it and receives it. Um, you have to be open to it.
Mm, mm,
It's really about opening the heart. And even though we have tragedies like this week in the United States, we've had a whole lot of shootings going on and mass murders, mass killings, which is terrible. I mean, it's the Aries energy, the fiery energy of Aries ruled by Mars,
mm,
but it's also uh, things that happen with Venus, or again, the bottom line is opening the heart,
mm,
opening to feeling. It's caused a lot of people to feel much more deeply
mm,
and maybe take appropriate action,
mm,
like in Aries, take appropriate action
mm, mm,
on that. And I've thought about that because I've been watching these stories about the shootings going on, and here we are in the Venus week of love, and I'm thinking, what is the greater purpose of this?
mm, mm.
Hopefully the greater purpose of this is to, you know, get rid of guns eventually, you
Yeah,
know, in the hands of the wrong people.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that's just a side note.
Mm,
Um, Here's also an interesting way of looking at Venus, because we've always seen Venus this way on the right. And
mhm,
this is like our Venus de Milo, very famous portrait, statue, sculpture of Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And this has always been represented to us as Venus, the love goddess.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find this statue in Cyprus, where Venus is said to have been born, the
Mm-hmm.
birthplace of Venus on the island of Cyprus that she originated from and came to Greece from there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is much more a picture of a warrior goddess. As you
Mm-hmm.
can see, she's armed,
Mm-hmm.
ready to go.
Mm-hmm. So the one on the left is the morning star,
Yeah,
more of a morning star, and the one on the right would be more of the evening star. Is that correct?
right,
Yeah.
right. Of course, she's lost her arms, so we have no idea what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she can't defend herself. She doesn't have any arms.
No, no. So maybe her power is in what you've identified as her being connected to wisdom, to the stars, Urania, bringing in love, wisdom, through the mind and the psyche. It's not about the physical component. And you discuss that in your book when you're making um, points about the difference between the evening goddess and the morning goddess, and just how different they are actually, even though we're talking about the same one goddess.
The same planet, it's the same goddess, it's just two attributes of her.
Yeah.
And really, all of us have within us both sides.
Mm,
We just might have been born with one more prominent because that's what we need to develop in our life.
mm,
But if you look in the book, you'll see the five-pointed star is applied to a little human figure.
mm-hmm,
And so our star points at the head and the heart connection,
mm-hmm,
but both of our arms are the opposite phase. So if we're a morning star, two arms are the evening star.
mm-hmm.
And if we're an evening star, two arms are the morning star. So actually, we have all 5 points in us, usually three of one and two of the other.
Right.
And so we're exhibiting different kinds of that Venus tendency,
Mm-hmm.
either the love aspect or the warrior aspect of Venus throughout our life, depending on which one, where the wheel is turning, where Venus is placed at that any given time, and how we're interacting.
Mm-hmm.
This is the table you were talking about, so you can see on this that there's a lot of different ways the morning star can be differentiated from the evening star.
Mm, mm. I really like that listing there, because I hadn't quite seen that put together like that before. It just makes it very, very clear. There's a clear distinction between the morning and the evening. There's no question about that. And I am a morning star. You're a morning or evening? I've just forgotten.
I'm an evening star.
You're an evening. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, as a morning star, do you relate to the idea of, more of the carpe diem kind of thing, where you're actually getting going? Because she's more connected to the earth and more productive in terms of, getting the day going and getting things done and so forth.
Hmm. Look, I do absolutely relate to the qualities of the morning star, but I have to say that I also relate to the evening star qualities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and perhaps some of that reason in my mind, the way I think about that is that, well, my VSP is in Scorpio, so it's a water sign, right? And then my natal Venus as well, she's in Pisces, in a water sign. So,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've got a lot of water there just with Venus in water signs. So,
Right.
hmm, yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and also the asteroid Urania is actually conjunct my Venus. So that's why I can really relate to the qualities of the evening and the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the asteroid Urania is conjunct my ascendant.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Um,
You know, I've
so
always seen Urania very prominent in the chart of astrologers. It's something that I've followed for many years, and she always shows up in the chart of astrologers. It's fascinating.
yeah, and sometimes even more than Uranus, the
Yes,
planet. But
yes.
that's prominent too. But when I discovered Urania being right on my ascendant, I thought, okay,
Mm,
well, you know that clenches it for me. No wonder astrology found me and I found it.
exactly, exactly. Is she right there with Pallas Athena as well?
Well, my Pallas Athena's in the fifth house, but
Oh, sorry, sorry. I
Urania's,
was thinking your
yeah,
relocated chart. Pardon me.
you
Yeah.
relook, yeah, in Greece, Pallas is the ruler. Athena is the ruler in Greece, but in my birthplace, in my homeland, Urania is the ruler.
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So that's the idea of different locations too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pulling up goddesses in different locations. But yeah, so the viewers of this can go down the list. This is in the book on page 44, but you
Mm-hmm.
can go down this list and see what the different attributes are between each of these two phases of Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what we have next. So this is how it looks on the zodiac. Um, it's These are the 5 points of the star in the period that we're in now, 2018 to 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we're right here right now. We're at 2021, 6 degrees Aries evening star.
Mm-hmm.
4 years from now, it'll be 3 Aries morning star.
Mm-hmm.
So it just moves slightly back with each star point.
Mm.
But Aries is moving a little faster than some of the other star points move. Of course, you would expect that from Aries.
Exactly.
Capricorn stays on the same degree for 4 years. It's like
Mm,
I think of my Capricorn mother.
mm.
Um, you know that okay, I'm going to tell you this once, and now I'm going to tell it to you again. you're
My
going to get
mother is
this you're
Capricorn.
going to get the same thing 4 years later.
That it just so makes sense symbolically, doesn't it? I mean, you know, Aries moves faster, it's got to move faster. It's Aries. Capricorn is just kind of more, it's more stubborn, if you like. It's just more kind of grounded, you know. It's so earthy, isn't it? So
It's really digging into the ground there. It's really kind of staying put for a time, but then when it moves off that degree, it jumps another like 3 degrees to the next one,
right.
because I think after the pair of 19s, we're going to go down to 16 Capricorn
Right, right.
after that, but that's not until 2026.
Right. Yeah. So just for the audience, in case there are some people that are not aware of this, that does the Venus star point move backwards, Ariel? Could you just say a couple of things on?
Well, backwards through the zodiac, but really in the sky or in space, we don't really have a backwards and a forwards, but
Yes,
the way we apply it on Earth. But
yes,
yeah, it moves against the way the planets move. The
yes.
planets move through the signs this way: Aries, Taurus, Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
But the Venus star moves this way: Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn. So yeah, it's going around the circle clockwise,
Mm-hmm.
which is really the same direction that the nodes move,
Mm-hmm.
the lunar nodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also said to me there's something important with the Venus star and its movement as it's moving against the zodiac and meeting up with planets coming towards it rather than the other way around. So it felt like it had a more important and uh, sort of predestined kind of impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, as you can see, well, these are the 5 points of the star. This is where, when I started looking at the retrograde cycle, as I was mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw the one before that, the one before that. And when I connected all the dots, I got this this
Mm.
beautiful star. And I thought, there it is.
Mm.
There's the Venus star. That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So um, now this is how it looks in your chart over a 40-year period.
Mm.
In other words, it's going to come back to the almost the same degree, but the same sign for sure,
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again.
Mm. Mm.
This is 5 passes of the 8-year cycle of Venus through all 5 signs.
Mm-hmm.
So that by the time you turn 40, your chart's going to look like this. And of course, Capricorn may not always be in your 10th house, but whatever house it's in,
Mm-hmm.
it's Aries, it's Capricorn, it's Scorpio, it's Leo, and it's Gemini that's been repeating again and again and again.
Mm. Mm.
So those are the signs you want to look for and the houses you want to look for in your chart to see
Mm.
what message is Venus giving to you. Where is it really making its presence known?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And then this one, actually, you can look at how they switch. If we start at 2012, we were in Gemini at the last transit of Venus over the sun, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a morning star.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one was Aries, evening star, alternating heartbeat. Then
Mm-hmm.
it went back to morning star Capricorn, then Scorpio evening star, then Leo morning star, then Gemini evening. Again, repeating Gemini 4 years later, but this time as an evening star instead of a morning star.
And is that
And
the
then
pattern
repeating the same pattern, Aries, Capricorn, Scorpio, Leo, and back to Gemini again.
yeah, yeah. And that pattern is consistent all the time. It never changes, does it? From morning star to evening star, etc.
Always,
Yeah.
always morning, then evening, morning, evening, morning, evening. It's never going to repeat 2 mornings in a row.
Yeah.
If it does that, then you know something serious has happened about a cosmic global polar shift.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful pattern. I mean, when I started studying this pattern, it's like, oh, I was getting into the rhythm of it.
Mm.
Morning, evening,
Mm.
Gemini, Aries, Capricorn, Scorpio, Leo,
Mm.
Gemini, Aries, Capricorn, Scorpio, Leo. They're
Mm.
like notes on a musical scale,
Yeah.
like a little tune, a harmonic tune that is playing. And
Mm.
this, by the way, is a harmonic. It's called the fifth harmonic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a circle divided by 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so they call that the fifth harmonic, which produces quintiles and biquintiles.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Venus star is pattern is actually connected to the biquintile quintile pattern of the fifth harmonic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is all about creativity, isn't it? Really? I mean,
Yeah,
in a nutshell. Yeah.
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 And I think we would think that, I mean, the sun is creativity and Venus is creativity. I think I would look at both planets as that.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the Venus star after all but a conjunction between the sun and Venus?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, these are just important numbers if people want to actually study this a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
9.5 months from one star point to the next, 1.6 years to go from one like synodic cycle, which would be like one retrograde to the next retrograde of Venus.
Okay.
4 years returns to the same sign but different phase.
Mm-hmm.
8 years returns to the same sign but the same phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then how long does it stay in one of these signs? A long time,
Mm-hmm.
between 96 and 108 years. So it averages 100 years through a sign.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
that's a very long period. And I was able to actually look at historical cycles of, well, what was the Venus star doing, let's say, for 100 years as it was going through Sagittarius? What was coming up in the world? And
mm,
who were the important people of that time? And
yeah.
I found some of the greatest philosophers and teachers
Mm.
of the 20th century
Mm-hmm.
were born during the Sagittarius star period.
Not surprising. Yes. I'm looking forward to the Scorpio shift from Scorpio to Libra and Aries into Pisces.
Oh, me too.
That's going to be really that's going to obviously set the tone, for many years to come, and it's so needed, isn't it? Because we've had the Venus Scorpio star point, the Venus Aries star point, both ruled by Mars, and of course Pluto as well for Scorpio. And so we're leaving behind that intense, what can also be very aggressive energy when it comes to Aries, particularly moving into Pisces and Libra. Pisces is the exalted sign of Venus, and of course, Libra is ruled by Venus. So it's just this beautiful, more harmonious, loving, softer vibration, isn't it? That we are going to be stepping into, not too far ahead, actually.
Right. And I was just mentioning that Venus had just moved into Aries this past week, and the sun has just moved into Aries, and they were getting really close to getting ready for their conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had all these shootings, the Martian aspect of the Aries star point for the last 100 years
Yeah.
has been quite violent because the sign on whatever the signs are on the Venus star point, I feel like Venus is um, I don't know if I want to use the word enabler, but it gives that sign what it wants. It supports that sign's energy. Um, for instance, it's a Mars ruled sign.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also has to do with, and Mars, by the way, is conjunct the dragon's head right now, Rahu, the North Node.
Yes.
So it's a particularly, you could say, unstable and sort of shoot from the hip kind of time anyway. So, you always look at what the ruler is doing. Like it's in Aries now. What's Mars doing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mars is in Gemini, but it's with Rahu. So the dragon.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, kind of, and it's right on the last Venus star point of Gemini. They're both on that last Venus star point. But you're right. And this is a point that I have made, that I feel like eras, whole historical eras shift when the sign on the star shifts from that 100-year period. And so, yeah, we'll be moving out of a Mars Pluto ruled sign into a Venus sign. We'll be moving soon out of the Aries Mars ruled sign into Pisces, which is where Venus is exalted. And several decades ahead, we'll move out of Gemini into Taurus. And this is the fascinating thing about the Venus star. It swings, the pendulum swings, where one period of history has 3 Mars signs on it, like now. And then slowly the pendulum moves back to Venus, where at some other point in history, we will have 3 Venus signs on the Venus star. So it goes back and forth from Mars to Venus, slowly, like that cosmic heartbeat, but in much bigger, longer cycles.
Yeah, and it's reflecting the balance of things, right? I mean, we can't have all feminine, all Venus, all softness, if you like. Because we live in a world of dualities. So in the world of duality, every archetype is expressed, and it has an appropriate place, right? It's just in my opinion at least, it's the shadow components that are not integrated, in a healthy way, that can produce more the darker shadow components of a person's psyche, and hence their actions, right, and their choices.
Right. And think about it, though, during this last 100-year period of Aries and Scorpio for Venus, women have become really empowered. I mean, this has really been one of the main underlying purposes for something like the Venus star point in Aries and in Scorpio.
Mm.
Now, in different historical epochs, maybe that was different. There was a power shift going on in different ways, but it can be gender, gender politics. But this has been a time when women collectively
Mm.
have really made great strides. Not of course over the whole world,
Mm.
but maybe in the Western world, women have really since the 60s. The
Mm.
Aries star point came in the late 20s, 1929. So through the 30s and the 40s, 50s, 60s, that's when it was the 30s and 40s. It was like a newly born Aries star. But
Mm.
right away, we had World War
Mm.
II, and we had all of a sudden women going into the workforce while all the men were off at war.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the problem happened when the men came home from war because the women didn't want to go back home.
Mm.
They wanted to keep their jobs. They liked doing something
Mm.
uh, outside, using their energy in a different way, in a very Aries kind of way.
Yeah, having their
Um,
independence, right?
yeah. And also Aries, I mean, the other point about Aries that I'll have to say, and that's really about the star cycle we're in now,
Mm.
Aries is about the self.
Mhm.
It's the archetypal sign on the 12-point wheel that says, who am I?
Mm.
And so this is actually a time period to focus on the self. It doesn't have to be in a selfish way. It can be self-improvement, self-awareness, self-reflection, building the best self you can build at this time. Self, really, you think about the Aries star cycle, look at all the self-help movement of books and workshops and
Mm.
videos and teachers and coaches that have come forth in this time about
Mm.
um, you know, there used to be big bookstores. We don't have them anymore, but there used to be big bookstores that had whole walls of shelves full of a section called self-help.
Yes, I remember them very
Do
well.
you think you would have seen a self-help section in 1900 in a bookstore?
No. No, definitely not. No.
So, there are really good points to each star point. There are really positive points that it brings to the culture
Mm.
during its transit period through that sign.
Mm.
And of course, there are the darker elements of it too, the shadow side of everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just recently here in Australia, we've had a very, very significant movement relative to women protesting, peacefully protesting against violence being, subjected towards women, whether in the professional world specifically as well, because there was a young woman that was raped in one of our head offices of politics here in Canberra. That was just an unbelievable situation. It's never happened in the history of politics in Australia, and her speaking up started this whole movement of women coming out and actually saying, enough is enough. We want to be treated, with fairness, equality, justice, respect, etc., etc. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because in the national chart of Australia, the current Aries Venus star point that we have right now hits off in the Australian chart the goddess Juno, which is in Aries. So you have,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it was, when
Mm-hmm.
I saw that, I was just blown away, because when that emerged in the news just in the last week, I thought, well, let me have a look at Australia's chart. And I knew the Venus Aries star point is, within momentum now. So I just had to see if there was a connection. I had a sense that there would be. And it's a very close conjunction, by the way. It's like a degree apart or something crazy like that. So yeah, there's a
Right.
powerful
Right.
example of a very positive expression, of this Venus Aries star point, empowering women in this country, to feel
Mm-hmm.
empowered and heard. And, goddess Juno who was the wife of Zeus, she was discovered in the sign of Aries. Her discovery chart, she was in Aries. So and that's not a coincidence. So she has this, I mean, even in her mythology, she was frequently enraged and angry because Zeus was constantly cheating on her and things like that. So she's an angry goddess, by her inherent sort of nature, if you like. Of course, that's not that they're all that's not the whole picture of her, but she is a fairly angry goddess. And I have noticed through the years, when Juno is activated, she really does bring the matters of anything to do with things being unfair, unequal, unjust, that it really gets things actively in a very dynamic way. So, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And most, especially in gender politics.
Mm, mm,
Um, and, Aries and Scorpio are connected on the star. They're like a karmic, it's what we call the karmic feeding line
mm,
energy, because the retrograde of Aries will happen. And then the very next retrograde that will happen, the next star point will be Capricorn, but it won't be retrograde. But the next one retrograde will be Scorpio. So through the interior of the star, this is how the retrogrades they go through the interior of the star to
mm,
make that star. And the Scorpio and Aries are connected in that way too, because again, they're both Mars ruled signs.
mhm,
But Scorpio, it seems like every time we get into a Scorpio star period, we have another outrageous undercover
mm,
story
mm,
breaking in the news, stuff that's been going on for a long time, that's been secret, that's been hidden, and it explodes into the news
mm,
and undercovered. And a lot of them are about sexual abuse, and especially among the powerful, very, very people in very high positions.
mhm,
And I've noticed that repeating over and over again. But other stories too,
mm.
undercover, government things, WikiLeaks,
Yeah.
the things that Edward Snowden brought out, things that we didn't know were happening. And that's part of Scorpio likes to keep things underground, likes to keep things hidden, right?
Mhm,
Um, Private,
mhm,
like, okay.
mhm.
And then it feeds into Gemini, which is the news media, the paparazzi,
Mm,
saying, okay, I'm going to expose this. I'm going to tell you everything.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
literally, archetypes literally speaking through the Venus star.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay, what have we got next here? Okay, so how to understand your own Venus star point,
Mhm,
just like you would anything in astrology. Um, First of all, are you a morning or evening star?
mhm,
Now, the other thing about that is I say, look to see how close to the phase change you were born through, because if you're very close to the next phase,
mm,
you have been progressing into that. Or if you're very close to the older phase, you're just progressing out of that and getting into the new phase. So you want to look at that. You could be born right in the middle, which is the strongest, or you could be on either side of it. So
right.
look at that.
Also,
And then you had
Ariel,
asked about sign and house. Yeah.
sure, can I just interrupt there? As an example, I noticed in your last webinar you mentioned Rodney King, and I couldn't help that stood out to me because he happens to be born at that changeover period, if you like. So I don't know if you remember, but his Venus star point, the one that you took relative to his chart example, it was days after his birth. And normally we would look at the star point pre-birth, right? So that was an example of what you were just saying relative to being born at that period where it changes over. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I said this in the book, but my rule for looking at the next star point, in case you're born close to the next one, is if the Venus and the Sun are already in the next sign, then I would say go ahead and pull it up to the next sign. For instance, on March 21st this year,
Mm-hmm.
the sun went into Aries and Venus went into Aries.
Mm-hmm.
But the star point doesn't happen until the night of the 25th and the day of the 26th, depending on where you are in the world. But let's say you were born on the 21st or the 22nd of March.
Right.
Both Sun and Venus are already in Aries. So go ahead and use the
Right.
Aries star point.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, and you asked about this earlier, is the sign more important or the house more important? Well, you want to look at both.
Mm.
I always look to aspects to a major planets or the midheaven or the ascendant.
Yes.
And then I look at the guardian planet of the VSP sign, which is also known as the ruling planet, but I don't like ruling. I want to change the terminology on that, the lingo. So I call it the guardian planet.
Right.
So the guardian of Aries is Mars.
Yeah.
So if you are an Aries star point, for instance, I've used this example of my chart, of my star point, and that is I'm an Aries star point, but the ruler is Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the other ruler is Athena too, but that's, we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But Mars in my chart is in Gemini.
Mm.
It's in the third house.
Mm-hmm.
It's conjunct Mercury.
Mm.
It's conjunct Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually, so then Mars becomes the planet that enacts the will of the Venus star point.
Right.
And when I realized, okay, who am I and what has been the constant in my life since I was a child, I have kept journals. I have been writing. I have been documenting things. I've been observing things. Okay, Gemini, Mars in Gemini, third house, the writer. And my career has been basically writing, teaching, consulting, traveling to do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And just, all of those things, they're all the passion of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how my Mars works towards expressing my passion of my Venus star point in Aries.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, just like most things in astrology, if we're looking at a house, we will look to the ruler of that house to find, well, where is the location of that ruler, right? Because wherever it's located, it's going to show how that house is being expressed, manifested, lived through, and so forth. So it's the same sort of principle, really.
Right, right. Yeah. So that's really what you do for, the people watching to kind of put it together. Now, this is really important. I think the most important thing in astrology for any technique, first of all, is to find out where it is in your chart, but then to find out its cycle, its cyclical pattern, and its frequency. Like how long does it stay there, or what's the next point, or whatever. And so this is the Venus star point. You can go to my website and find this and download this PDF. And then do what we were saying before. I don't know if I can enlarge this. Yeah. This is the first page. It starts in 1870. But let's say you're always going to find two dates here. Let's say you were born, okay, here's May 4th, 1885 and February 1886. Let's say you were born in December of 1885. You, even though it seems closer to go to the next one, February, you would still go back to May 4th of 1885, and that would be your star point.
Okay. And then what's the next step to start to identify? Because there are 5 points in total that you work with, right? And so
Yeah.
the head of the star is the one that you just pointed out on the ephemeris for a person
Yeah.
in December.
And the arm, then this becomes the arm on the left side, which is Cancer. And this becomes the leg on the left side, which is Virgo, because they came before and they're feeding into your star point.
So are they always the left-hand side of the arm and leg, the ones before your Venus star point? Is it always that way, Ariel? That sequence?
Yeah, it's always in left and right is arbitrary because there really is no left and right again up and up there in the heavens.
Yeah,
But it's because it's in a circle in the sky, kind of. And so basically what you're saying, but if you're putting it on a human figure,
yeah,
I would say, because again, the left side is the feminine side of the body, but the ones that came before are like the evolutionary flow. And this really is truly what I call evolutionary points of
mm-hmm,
Venus,
mm-hmm,
because it's where Venus actually was before.
mm-hmm.
It's where she actually made her star point connection. So then the other arm and leg, after Taurus would be Pisces and then Sagittarius.
And
Uh,
that
and
becomes the right arm and the right leg?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
that sequence is always the same for any person looking at their Venus star points to identify the.
Yeah, I put your star point in the middle, right over your head and
Yeah.
your heart connection. And the
Mm-hmm.
two before that are going to be the arm and the leg. And then the two after that are going to be the ones that come after you, the other arm and the leg.
Right. And is it always the left corresponds to the two previous, and the right arm and leg corresponds to the two after the head point? If that makes sense.
Yeah, but again, don't get confused with left and right.
Right.
Just draw out a little star figure,
Right.
okay? And know that when you're drawing it, let's say on paper or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
there as you're looking at the star, it's on the left side.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
And then those are the two before, and then the two after are on the right side. So that's your own personal, what I call your own personal pentagram,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the 5 points of your star. And boy, can you do a lot with that.
Oh yeah. Most certainly can. You actually do
And
readings, right? Just Venus star
yeah,
readings. Yeah.
yeah, I just want to mention one more, actually, whoops. Um, this diagram that's become so well known and populated all over the internet now
Mm-hmm.
is actually a diagram from a book called A Little Book of Coincidence by John Martineau.
Mm.
And he was recently interviewed by Adam Summer on his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy to hear him
Mm-hmm.
because this book really, really gave me here's the book.
Right. What is the book about?
Well, it's about how all the planets look, I opened to the Venus page. This is where he talks about the kiss of Venus and the
Oh,
pentagram and everything. But it's about all the different planets in the solar system and
right.
all the different, like coincidentally,
Right.
the patterns they make and the cycles they share and the numbers and the mathematics. And
Right.
it's really like it once you read this book, you'll see there is really nothing random at all about our solar system and where these planets are placed.
Yeah. Not
They
that
are
I
connected very, very specifically and particularly.
absolutely. Yeah. I've always
And
had a
so
sense
I loved this book, and it inspired me quite a bit
of
to, in my early work and research with the Venus star.
okay.
And these are my other books, and just if you want to look them up, this is kind of my history and
Mhm.
a little bit. And
So
this
you've
is the
written 4 books in total, is it? 4?
actually five. There's another
Wow.
one that's not here because it's been out of print for a long time.
I mean, talk
But
about
yeah, the Venus Star was my fifth book.
right. And a fifth, that's obviously really cute, right? Number 5 being Venus, fifth book. It's just beautiful. Um,
Exactly.
it,
But this is the two books that our audience can look for. This is the print book,
Mm-hmm.
By the way, do you have an easy time getting the print book in Australia?
Yeah, yeah, I didn't have to wait long at all. Actually, I
I
was
mean,
quite
it comes from,
surprised.
where do you get it from? Amazon?
Um, I honestly I can't remember now where I bought it from. Amazon is probably not where I got it from because Amazon seems to take it seems to be more expensive from here and it seems to take a bit longer as well. There are I think it was look, honestly I can't remember, but I certainly didn't have any issues regardless of which company it came from. Yeah, it was very quick. I was pretty
Okay. Because lately I've had people from other countries asking me how they can get the print book. And
right.
um, I'm having I'm glad to mail it to other countries, but then I have to go to the post office and it's very expensive. The postage is usually more than the book itself. But
Yeah. They should
um,
just look up online. There are so many places that, that offer it, So
okay,
yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
And then this is the ebook or the PDF. It's an abridged version. Don't expect all the charts and the graphs and everything in the ebook,
Hmm.
but it's like getting straight to where's my star point? What does it mean? Who
Yeah.
am I connected to? Things like that, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to stop my share and come back to you. And
Hey.
so we got through that, right?
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing those slides actually, because like you said, pictures, there's so much that opens up in people's imagination, right? And perception when they can see something visually, it really expands on whatever topic you're obviously discussing. So those slides were wonderful actually, and thank you so much for sharing them. Because I know I personally haven't put slides together. I've been a little bit, what's the word? I'm not very tech savvy, to be honest with you. I'm pretty basic when it comes to technology. Also, of course, I understand how long it takes to actually put slides together. But the beauty of that is once you have them there, you can, transform them, alter them, adjust them, etc. I know it takes a lot of time, is what I'm trying to say. So thank you for sharing those with all of us.
Well, we all have our own special talents, and that's what the Venus Star Point is all about. I couldn't do what you're doing. I couldn't do a YouTube podcast or video cast all the time. It just,
Right,
it
right,
would be beyond my whatever, my little wheelhouse of of talent here.
right.
So I rely on other people like you and the other organizations to invite me on, and people do, and have people have embraced the Venus star very well through the astrological world, and it's very gratifying.
Absolutely. It's been like I said before, it's been such an important component in my personal journey and in my professional journey the last 4 years. That's why I decided to do your training program as well. First, I bought the book, and then I thought, well, I've got to do her training program as well because there's something really in this. I could sense it, I could feel it, and then of course I did the work with the observation of looking at charts. And the biggest thing for me was the transition of my father, because that's been by far the biggest event of my life, without question, thus far. And I think it will always be like that. But I just want to encourage viewers, for you guys that are watching this at the moment, if you are at that level with astrology where you are, working with charts and so forth, and you love Venus just like we do, I highly recommend Arielle's training program. It's it offers, think about the points that we touched on today. Think about that being expanded in ways that helps you really understand of how to actually work with this star point or the 5 points that you were born under and so forth. And it's something that you can take your time with as well, because Venus, I just called you Venus because see there's the part of you that is Venus, Ariel.
Oh, thank you, but
Ariel has she's recorded the programs. Okay, so she'll send you the the slides, the information. You'll get the audio. It's easy to follow. I've done it myself, so I know. I highly vouch for her program. And if you want to expand, and enrich your practice, I highly recommend it. It's an investment.
Yeah, and then following that, you can apply for the exam and become a certified practitioner. That's all on my website too. But I'm getting quite a few now from around the world, all over the world. And it's really gratifying for me to see how, again, people from everywhere. I just sent an exam out to Japan. I
Right,
sent one out to Australia last week, and I
right.
sent one out to here in the US yesterday, and gosh, all over. And then somebody just purchased one from, what country was that? I don't remember now, but I'm thinking, wow, it's going everywhere.
It, well, it's expanding because people are getting to know about it. Your name is circulating in the astrological communities quite a lot. Your book, the value of the book, the value of the Venus star point, that little PDF thing of how to find your Venus star point. As I said to you earlier, before we jumped on and started recording, my mentor, who's he's in his 70s now, he hadn't worked with the Venus star point in the context of the body of work that you've produced either. And he's been practicing astrology for 45 years now, right? And he's a very technical astrologer and a very gifted astrologer. And I've been extremely blessed to have been under his wing, as it were, the last 25 years. But I brought this information to him through so it's starting to it's Venus, isn't it? She's
Well, the book just turned 10 years old, so she's really getting her, she's like a young 10-year-old child now who's getting her, getting her footing, getting around, starting to get around and say, Mom, I want to leave home now. I want to travel.
that's a really beautiful metaphor, actually. And it's also, I
Yeah.
mean, Venus.
But like you said, none of us had ever worked with this star before. I looked around for, is anybody working with this? Is there a way for me not to need to write this book? Is this material out there? Well,
Mm,
there was material in little bits and pieces out about the pentagram of Venus,
mm,
but
mm,
and where it would be,
mhm,
from one retrograde or whatever to the next conjunction.
mm,
But there wasn't really a body of work that really delved into the star points. And the reason I did it was because I wanted to show how we are all connected to that whole star, not just the one point.
mhm.
Okay, the one point is your driving point,
Yeah,
but the arms and the legs, all 5 points, as I just showed
yeah.
on that other slide, was like, okay, well, that's your whole being. That's like when you draw up that diagram,
Mm,
then that's like your new wheel. It's your new chart. These are like angles,
mm,
instead of the 4 angles of our birth chart. Now we have the 5 points of our Venus star chart. And
mm,
then you can put everything around that, your
mhm,
relationships, the transits, your own personal planets.
mm,
So you can see how Venus brings in these things into your life
mm.
and what's important for any given time.
Absolutely. And your book is amazing. Honestly, I've read, so many parts of it over and over and over again, just to let it sort of absorb and kind of well, I don't know, but anyway, I just keep going back to it. Every time I think of something or think of a person or a situation, whether it's in my own personal life or professionally, I always go to this just to remind myself of things. And I just want to tell guys as well that there's a really great section you've got in the back as well, which is about the Venus star point in the houses and the shadow component. And you've got a couple of lines written on in each Venus star point through the 12 houses and what the shadow component can bring up for people. And I found that very, very useful, actually. And very powerful, because when I was looking at Prince's chart, the artist, the singer who died in 2016, his Venus star point is actually in his third house, right? And um,
In
one,
Aquarius. He's an Aquarius star point.
yeah, yeah, and his sister in his life has been a really, sadly, she's been a really dark force in his life, right? And so there's,
Did you say his sister?
yes, yes,
Oh, okay. See, I don't know much about his personal life, but when I was exploring the Aquarius star point for the research, and
mm,
I found Michael Jackson
mm,
and Madonna
mhm,
and Prince
mhm,
and Paul McCartney
mhm.
and like the biggest rock stars of our time
Yeah,
all in Aquarius.
yeah.
I thought, whoa, and so I used to joke in my workshops, yeah, Aquarius star points, they're the rock stars.
Well, it seems to be that way because the names you just named, I mean, Michael Jackson, Prince, and Madonna, I grew up with their music since I was, like I was literally barely kind of, 5, 6, 7 years of age, and I was dancing to Michael Jackson, and things
Right,
like that.
right.
So I do know a lot about his life because I've done a few videos on my YouTube channel about his chart, um, with harmonic charts and things like that. I've looked at a lot of different things because I just adore him so much. But relative to the Venus star point, I thought it was interesting when he died in 2016. There was a Venus star point in Gemini at that time, which was conjunct his sun at the time, well, close enough to the time of his death. And so now that brings me to an important question that I wanted to ask you for everybody else's benefit as well. When you're looking at the transiting Venus star point, we have this momentum building up, just like we've had, as you pointed out before, on the 20th of March, the sun went into Aries, right? Just a few days ago. And Venus went into Aries on the 21st of March. So they're both in the same sign. The conjunction has already begun, but the Venus star point doesn't happen till a few days later.
Right.
Relative to orbs, how much can we allow either side of the date of the Venus star point with things being activated, events in people's lives? What would be in terms of days or weeks or months?
That's a good question. When I'm looking at a person's life, their total life,
Hmm.
I'm looking at the year. I mean, remember that example slide where the Venus star point was going to be on 18 degrees of Capricorn
Hmm.
back in 2018, and then again in 2022,
Hmm.
and not until 2026 was it going to move up up to 16.
Right,
So I thought that could be a whole 8-year period of a person's life.
right,
If you have your sun or something important at 18 Capricorn,
right.
that's 8 years of your life that Venus is actually shining its energy, its light, its the heartbeat.
Mm.
Now, I didn't realize that. I don't know how close or exact it was to his sun when he transitioned,
Um,
but I would say that before he transitioned, it was close enough to his sun, because mostly when a Venus star point hits a person's sun, they are thrust into the limelight of fame and notoriety. And
mm,
so it was getting most of his musical career. It was really, really moving into orb
right. I see what
of
you're saying.
his.
That's the
And
big.
if it was exactly on his sun when he transitioned, it might have meant that he
It was
came here to
exactly.
do
It was exactly 16
he
degrees.
came here to do what he
Mm.
did what he came here to do.
Absolutely. So he passed on the 21st of April 2016. And that year we had an evening, Gemini evening star on
Right.
June 6th at 16 degrees. So it was literally exactly conjunct his sun when he passed.
Okay. Then
Yeah,
that means that was the point at which he was done.
right. Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean everybody has the transit to their sun and they're done.
Of course.
Usually it thrusts them into a place of fame and notoriety. And I imagine when he passed,
Hmm.
I kind of remember that a little bit
Mm.
because I was a little bit older than the Prince generation. So that wasn't really my music. I was like the Beatles and all that. But I remember, um, for instance, Paul McCartney's son was right on the current Venus star point in the 60s when they shot, to fame.
Right.
He was right. It was right on there. He's
Right.
29-degree Gemini sun,
Right.
Jupiter at 1 degree Cancer, and the Venus star point at the time was straddling 0 Cancer, 29 Gemini, right on his sun Jupiter. But
Right.
that's normally what happens.
Mm.
But I would say that all those years, 8 years, I don't know how long his career was, 8 years, 16 years,
Oh, it
but
was very.
probably two whole Venus pentagrams before he transitioned
Mm.
that was getting really close to his sun. And so he was thrust into the limelight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was a striking example actually, especially when you just look at his whole life, and you look at that star point, the movement of that.
Did they ever determine his cause of death?
No, and this is the other point that I wanted to make in relation to the question you just asked. What's really fascinating to me is that there's a lot of mystery still surrounding the actual facts of his death. There's been statements made that have not really been authenticated or truly validated. So there's a lot of mystery, a lot of suspicion, and that I don't know whether that will remain forever, but that's still the way it is at the moment. A lot of people believe that he was deliberately killed, right? And whether that is true or not, I don't know, but that's what a lot of people do feel for various reasons. But here's the interesting thing: when he did die, what had happened was that his Aquarius star point, which he was born with, as you know, the Aquarius changed into the Capricorn star point in 86, right?
Right,
86. So by the time he died, what had happened was that Aquarius star point, his main head star, had moved to 21 degrees of Capricorn, right?
right,
And
right.
that sits on the midpoint of his Mars Neptune, which to me describes very much the the storyline, if you like, surrounding his death. That the Mars being killed and Neptune, the mystery, the not knowing,
The
So
mystery of it all. And
that,
also, we have to think about drugs.
yes, well, I mean that certainly was an allegation about him.
Hmm.
I don't believe it, but yes, I mean we don't know for sure. So, but regardless of what the truth is or isn't, I
Well,
think
thank you for presenting that example. I'll take a closer look at his chart and his life. I hadn't looked at it before.
yeah, I was pretty blown away. I looked at it because I love him so much. So I just wanted to share that with you and everybody else who's watching. And I think you've got a couple of examples, maybe, have you? Would you still like to share those?
You had some examples,
Oh,
right?
okay. Can I do that? Is that okay?
Yeah, we've gone for about 2 hours now, so
Sure.
it's 9 o'clock here at night,
Right.
and
We
I'm starting to fade a little bit. But why
yeah.
don't you just show me one more example that you have?
Um, well, honestly, I've sort of covered it because really the example I wanted to show was Australia's national chart with the current Venus Aries star point hitting. And look, I'll just bring up that chart just so that
Yeah,
people.
go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead and show it to us. And I'd like to see Prince's chart too.
sure. So I have them here. So let's just start with the Australia. So there's Australia's national chart. And if we look over into the 12th house, we can see Juno at 9 degrees of Aries, right? So this is where
Yeah,
the Venus star point, this is what it's activated. And it's very interesting to me that it's happened in the 12th house because it's unleashed a collective unison in the feminine vibration, you know, here in Australia at the moment. It's huge what's happening here, and what
Mhm.
the exposure, because the 12th house is what's hidden, right? It's what's out of our conscious view. So here comes the, you know, the VSP in Aries, and she ignites that Juno, which is women rising, you know, in Aries, standing up with
Right.
confidence, right? It's, I mean, I was blown away by, and then, of course, we can even go further and say, well, the Venus star point is squaring the Sun Saturn conjunction of Australia's chart, right? And so that's
Well,
very significant.
further to your point,
Mm,
the Sun and Saturn conjunction are squaring Juno, and Juno's in the 12th house in
yes,
Aries, which means that historically, throughout the history of the nation, women have been kept kind of under
yes,
and hidden in the 12th house and suppressed. And
yeah,
so, of course, at some point, now I think this would have started a few Venus star Aries cycles ago, because when it exactly hit 9,
mm, mm,
that would have been maybe, I don't know, uh, early 2000s, late 90s.
mm,
Um, I
okay,
would have thought that something else would have triggered
mm-hmm,
that point, but every time the star point comes back to Aries,
mm, mm.
it's gonna repeat that theme.
Yes, yes. And you're right. And that would be worth actually, you know, doing a little bit of research and investigation. I didn't do that for this today. I just didn't have the time. But you're right. It would be worth looking back at what was going on in the 90s and 2000. I can't actually at the moment, you know, just connect to something that was happening here. At the same time, I've lived out of this country for many, many years at different points in my life as well. So I'd have to definitely do research. But um,
Well, I can give you the exact date that the star point hit that Juno,
okay.
because I
Well,
just opened the table here.
okay.
We're
Well,
looking at 9 Aries, right?
yeah. While you do that, I need to excuse myself for 1 minute. Okay. Sorry about that. How did you go?
Uh, it was 2001.
Okay.
It was the 100-year anniversary year of the swearing in, this Australian swearing in chart that happened in 1901.
Of course.
Uh, the star point hit Juno in 2001, and it also would have activated the sun of the chart
Mm,
up here at 10.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'm sure. And also there was a trine to Venus from Juno. Now
Mm-hmm.
again, Venus, another feminine archetype, is here in the 8th house, in
Mm-hmm.
what we call kind of a hidden
Mm,
house.
absolutely.
Juno
Mm,
is in the 12th house in a hidden house. So I have to, I'd have to say that women in the history of Australia
Mm,
um, have been kind of kept behind the scenes
mm, mm.
as much as possible. And I would say that women in Australia now are really tired of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're in, we're in such
Beyond the beyond, beyond the beyond.
yeah, I like that, beyond the beyond. It's so true. It's so true. There's, I mean, the change that will be born out of this, will be life changing for the future generations, really. And so the women at the moment, they're just setting the stage for that, So yeah,
Right,
which is
right.
exciting, really exciting. Yeah. So that's one example. And the other one, I didn't need to do that, I don't think. Sorry, I just needed to do that. Uh, okay, so there's Prince's chart. Okay, so his VSP would be here in the third house. There's his sun in the eighth at 16 degrees. So when he died, the transiting VSP was 16 of Gemini.
And
And
what's that little arrow pointing down that's next to his sun?
That's Vulcan. Because I work with esoteric astrology, I leave Vulcan. Well, I put Vulcan in my charts. So yeah.
So that's a pretty powerful signature in his chart. What does Vulcan represent in esoteric astrology?
Well, how it works is like this. Just to in summary, Vulcan is always very close to the sun for every single person born, right?
Okay,
And so for that reason, having it next to your sun can be neither here nor there. But
okay,
when you have something else there, like here, you can see he's got Vesta, the goddess Vesta, right, conjunct Vulcan and conjunct the sun, actually. So those three become this triple conjunction that's actually very profound. Vulcan is the work we do behind the scenes that nobody sees, that is marked by devotion, persistence, dedication. It's the alchemical work as well that we do on ourselves and in our life behind the scenes. It's the old magician working in the lab away where he doesn't get seen and he doesn't get the rewards necessarily as such in terms of public limelight, because he's not a public figure. He's not interested in that at all. When you think about that relative to Prince, because this technically is all in his it's in his eighth house, as far as I'm concerned. Vesta can be influencing both the seventh and eighth, right? But when you drag that Vesta up with Vulcan, it's very easy to say that this would be in the eighth house. And in fact, there is another time of birth which is a rectified time of birth that I have, and this isn't it actually. And in the rectified time, all these planets are well and truly into the eighth house, including Vesta. So the way I
well, you know what? I'm going to have to say my comment about this because I wasn't familiar with this chart. And so my answer to you earlier was that it's not typical that somebody would pass when the Venus star point is hitting their natal sun. It's usually when they rise to prominence or fame.
Mm,
But the fact is, if this chart is correct, and it looks like an exact time chart,
mm,
AA rating,
mhm,
um, his eighth house cusp is 16 Gemini, which is the house of transition,
mhm,
the
mhm,
Scorpio house. And so the star point was actually, more importantly, to this point,
mm.
hitting his eighth house cusp,
Yeah,
where his sun also was.
yeah. Okay, that's a very good point. Yeah.
And so I would say that would give more credence to this chart, just simply because
Mm.
that's when he passed.
Absolutely. I can't remember the rectified time that I have, whether this is it or whether it's. I don't think this is it, because this rating double A, this says to me that this is a solar fire chart. So it would be very interesting. I'm going to explore that outside of this session today. But yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that can be a very powerful significator for an accurate time of birth, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so, and just finally, remember I said that his own Aquarius star point, which from the time of his birth to his death had reached 21 degrees of Capricorn. So it's in here in Aquarius to begin with. By the time he dies, it ends up over here at 21 of Capricorn, which places it at the midpoint of Mars Neptune. And I just think that, well, specifically the Neptune being, in the 12th, it's like a double signature because Neptune rules the 12th house, traditionally anyway, right? So it's a
Hmm.
double signature of mystery there because this is his own, um, he's the head of his star. It's gotten to the point of being at the midpoint of Neptune Mars at his death. So I just see that as being quite significant outside
Right.
of, yeah.
And the thing I have to mention about his Venus star point, it's actually the degree is 8 degrees Aquarius. Because
Yeah.
remember earlier I mentioned that Prince and Madonna
Mm,
and Michael Jackson
mm, mm.
were all born the same year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were all born in 1958, and they all had an 8 degrees Aquarius star point opposite exactly
Mm,
Uranus at 8 Leo. And
mm,
I mentioned this in my book in Aquarius that not just the star power of the Aquarius star point that all of these rock stars had, but
mm,
also just the connection to Uranus,
mm.
which is like how they exploded into the public eye and how they became, I mean, so many groups, so many thousands and thousands, millions, not thousands, millions of fans around the world following them and going through. They had the ability to really lift and change and transform their audiences just by listening to them and
Well,
just by, yeah,
they were electrifying, and that's
yeah,
Uranus. It's electric.
that's Uranus, electrifying, great word,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I've seen these people live. I've been to their concerts. So I've not only followed them and listened to their music, but I've seen them perform, and it is literally like being um, in ecstasy and totally blissed out, and it's like it's so hard to put into words, but they are electrifying. Their energy is so much larger than life. They literally create this pulse that just captures every single human being or soul that's there in their presence. It's overwhelming. It's just so powerful.
Right. And further to the point, that opposition to Uranus, the electrifying
Mm,
magnetism of the Venus star is also in connection to natal Venus for him at 7, almost 8 degrees of Taurus.
yeah.
And
So
so it brings his own Venus into it.
mm,
And so there's both Venuses. There's the Venus star point
hmm.
and Venus and Uranus, and not too far away is Neptune. So, yeah, the power through music, through artistry, Venus,
Mm.
through showmanship and creative imagination to be
Abs-
able to almost have a movement. I mean, with the Neptune there, he could have started a religious movement. He could have.
Absolutely, and he was a very spiritual man, actually, very, very spiritual. Yeah, I mean,
And he had a cult following. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm one of those. I'm one of
right.
those members.
I have another really good friend and colleague in Southern California who's also one, just like you. She just loves Prince and she mentions him a lot. And I'm going to tell her, her name is Krista, and
Right.
I'm going to tell her to listen to this broadcast.
Absolutely, absolutely. And she can check out, I've got a couple of other videos I've done on Prince's chart. So if she's into astrology and Prince, she'll probably
Oh,
appreciate.
she is. She would love it.
Awesome. Just finally, with this, what just occurred to me is that his Venus star point being here in the third at 8 degrees of Aquarius, as you pointed out, it connects to Venus and Uranus and Neptune. So it forms that big grand cross, right, in fixed
Yeah,
signs. We know
yeah.
grand crosses are very, very powerful. especially in fixed, well, any of the signs really, or qualities, but yeah, fixed is it's really
Yeah.
steady and
Oh, I think they have the power of attraction.
yeah, yeah. Okay. And just finally, the other one I had was Madonna, which you rightly pointed out. She too has an Aquarius Venus star point, which sits here in her fifth house at 8 degrees. So it's actually opposite her Venus. So there's another example of Venus connection, just as
Right.
it's had. What else?
And Uranus.
And Uranus, yes,
And
absolutely.
there's Neptune again in the same position down here
Neptune, yeah. So yeah,
that Prince had, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. So it's that configuration showing up again because they were born so close, weren't they? Um,
Yeah.
and that's really all I had highlighted about that. Just the fact that it was opposite Uranus, Venus, and obviously, she's a very dynamic woman. She's so creative. Whether you like her or hate her doesn't really matter. The point is that she's very dynamic on stage. She's quite electrifying herself within her own right. Very different to Michael Jackson and Prince, of course, but still just incredible energy. Just really dynamic, electrifying energy that it just livens you up when you're in her presence when she's on stage performing in that way. So yeah, I just thought that was a very interesting example again of another artist. Yeah.
Well, these are great examples. Thank you for showing them. And listen, I just want to say, I want to say good night now to you and to everybody. And um, it's the Venus Cazimi is coming right up. And I also want to point one other thing out about the book, if you have it,
Yeah.
that this isn't just an astrological undertaking. I think following the Venus star is actually a practice that you can do, that you can bring Venus into your life. And at the back of the book, I have a Venus Mudra. And
Yeah.
also, if you look up my YouTube channel, Venus Star Rising YouTube channel, there
Yeah.
is a Venus Mudra.
There is.
Um,
I've done it. I've
and
seen it. It's great.
I do that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And almost daily, and sometimes several times a day. But to put yourself in that star pattern and send the energy around your body in that star, and that would be a very good practice to do, especially now at the beginning of this new Aries cycle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've been practicing yoga for many, many years. So I've always kind of been doing that in my own way. But certainly, seeing your book and you naming it the Venus Mudra, etc. I've paid attention to it in a different way through a different perception or experience. And so we will leave you. We will love you and leave you and thank you for your graciousness, your time, your wisdom, your brilliant mind, your brilliant sharing. We love you.
Well,
We appreciate
that's
you.
that I can't take all that in. That's too much.
Well, it's not. It's not. And it's coming straight from my heart. And
I
I
okay,
thank
I
you for that.
accept that heart to heart. Thank you.
And I know my audience will feel the same. So we thank you so much and we wish you a beautiful
Yeah.
um,
And hello to the audience. I'm very pleased to be here and
and we
love our time together. Thank you.
and next time, Ariel, if it's okay with you, at some stage we'll organise another session and we'll go live as well to give people the opportunity to engage with you with questions
That
as
would be great. I was thinking we were going live tonight, and so that we would get a chance to chat with people. But next time.
next time. Okay, thank you so much for everything, and
Okay.
we will see you very very soon. Much love.
All right. All
Blessings.
right. My love to all.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank
Okay. Bye.